Hallelujah.
I would ask that Bob or Brad turn down the lights just a little bit for me, would you please? Just dim them a bit. And that'll make things a little easier this morning. We've sung about God being exalted and Jesus being exalted, and I would just, ask everybody here knows what a victorious sovereign or a mighty king or a hero, a real honest hero looks like, right? They look like this.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it. They dress really well, often in some sort of uniform that often bears an insignia that identifies them as having some rank or power or authority. They may bear weapons. They're seen in the company of other people whose authority is recognized, especially those with religious authority. Very often, this ruler, this prince, this hero has a mighty steed, sometimes who is just as valiant with weaponry as the hero is. If the hero happens to be Asian, he's supposed to look like Bruce Lee. Not like a short, chubby class clown who has to squinch up his face in order to make his magic powers work. And the brave, victorious hero is not supposed to hang out with reindeer and look kind of like a doofus. Disney knew it, and the sculptures of Jesus' day knew it. As much as Christian artists have tried to make Jesus look more regal in their paintings of Palm Sunday by having him sit up straight, by putting a halo around his head, by having as tall a donkey as they can possibly get him on, particularly if it happens to be a white one that looks like a mighty steed. We know that the reality was probably much more humble. As Dominic Crossan reminded us, Jesus doesn't ride a stallion or a mare, no horse, right? Jesus doesn't even ride a mule, which is a cross between a donkey and a horse, and still bigger, stronger, right? No horse, no mule, not a male donkey, not even just a simple female donkey, but Jesus chooses to ride into town on the most unmilitary mount imaginable, a female donkey still nursing while the little colt trotting along beside her. The colt has to come with mommy because he still depends on her for food. One way to keep his feet from dragging on the ground would have been to ride side seat. A little feminine, little wussy. But if Jesus had ridden regular bareback, it would have been a bit unimpressive. His robe definitely would have ridden up, would have showed off his dusty, hairy legs, his knobby knees, his worn-out sandals, his dirty feet. But it's this donkey with her colt that really makes the point for Matthew. What it tells us is that Jesus isn't interested in power the way we're used to defining it. Not the way they defined it then, and not the way we still tend to define it in all the movies that make the biggest blockbusters. Jesus came and teach, to encourage and empower everyone you met, while shaking up the religious and political leaders who tended to want to be the great, if not always terrible, whoever they were. The incarnation isn't so much about Jesus leaving all the God stuff behind. When I hear this passage from Philippians, I tend to imagine a great big awesome balloon that slowly has all the helium let out of it, and you eventually get this limp, lifeless balloon that now is humble enough to come to earth and be a person. But that's not what Paul is talking about. The incarnation is about Jesus letting go of the power that created all that is in order to share power with us. Every day of Jesus' ministry was about giving away more and more of the God stuff within, only to find out that the more he emptied himself, the more he had to share. The more he emptied himself, the more he was refilled and prepared to do it all over again. The more Jesus counted connection to God not as something to be clung to, but cherished and nurtured, the more Jesus could do all the things God asked him to do. By letting go of the God self, in order to fully embrace human life, Jesus was able to reveal to us once again that the image of God really is within us. And we find our truest humanity when we're using our power to help others, to love others into wholeness, not to have power over them in some way. Jesus is the hero who rides a reindeer and shows off his knobby knees. Jesus is vulnerable and fully human. No armor, no weapons, just love of God, love of people, and a desire to do God's work for justice. Listen again to most of the passage from Philippians. I'm going to go ahead and use the translation called The Message because it helps us hear it a little differently, although I like the passage the way we had it. Instead of becoming a slave, Jesus let go of divinity to become an oppressed human being. That's closer to what I think a lot of people miss in some ways, right? That Jesus joins us in the reality of us struggling against powers that we're not in charge of, right? But I like this even better. I'm also going to back up a few verses because I think it's important to get the context of this. So Paul tells these Christians, if you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if Jesus' love has made any difference in your life, if being part of a community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart, if you care, then do me a favor. Agree with each other. Love each other. Be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet-talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourself just long enough to lend a helping hand. Think of yourself the way Jesus thought of himself. He had equal status with God, but didn't think so much of himself that he had to cling to the advantages of that status. Not at all. When the time came, Jesus set aside the privileges of deity and took on the status of a servant, becoming human. And having become human, Jesus stayed human. It was an incredibly humbling process. He didn't claim special privileges. Instead, he lived a selfless, obedient life and then died a selfless, obedient death, and the worst kind of death at that, a crucifixion. risen Christ rather than become more like the one who got crucified. But when we love and live as much like Jesus as possible, we begin to find a strength in ourselves that we never knew could be there. We find ourselves more and more willing to make some sort of sacrifice in order to make a difference. We get up early to meet the food truck to give people free produce. We give up whatever. We do a little extra something. We find that sacrifice worthwhile. We're more willing to give all of our heart and soul and mind and strength to doing all the little things that change the world for the better. At the music studio where I have my other job right now, the song that more kids want to learn than any other from the voice teacher is Let It Go from the Disney movie Frozen. Have any of you seen the movie?
No.
I heard that song over and over and over and over and over every Monday and Wednesday, and I'm like, I have got to watch this movie.
Sing it. Sing it.
Let it go! I don't remember it now. Gee, many Christmas. Anyway, in the movie we meet two sisters, princesses in a wonderful dominion ruled by their parents. The older sister has a magical power. She has the ability to freeze things, to create snow whenever she wants to. She can create ice for skating in the great ballroom in the palace. And her little sister delights in the middle of the summer in saying, "Want to build a snowman?" And they do. But this power is rather odd, and as it grows, she and her parents become more and more afraid of that power, and that she might not be able to always control it, and the harm that it could cause if it got out of hand. And so they eventually hide her away and try to teach her how to control it. But as her fear and theirs gets bigger, of course, her ability to control it gets less and less. Eventually, there is an accident, her parents die, the sisters are left alone. And when the older one finally comes of age, she's crowned as queen. And she's so afraid she'll do something wrong, so afraid people will find out her secret, so afraid that there's another accident, and she freezes the entire realm and creates the deepest winter they've ever known. Ashamed at what she's done, she runs away to hide in the mountains and creates this huge ice castle for herself where she will live alone and sings the song, Let It Go. Just be who you are. Let it go. Being a Disney movie right about now, you'd expect some prince to go find her in her ice tower and save the day, preferably with true love's kiss. Isn't that how the prince always rescues the maiden who's in the tower? With a true love kiss? I am so proud of Disney. In this movie, it's the younger sister who has the truest love. She puts all her strength and energy into helping her sister regain her sense of self. In a very un-Disney way, she's the hero. She doesn't need a prince. In fact, the prince who is in the story turns out to be a real jerk. No offense. She doesn't need a man to do the heavy lifting for her. She does need friends to support her as she tries to love her sister into wholeness. And her friends turn out to be the doofus with the reindeer and a snowman who magically comes to life. Jesus asks us to be there for one another, loving each other as we find the hero within ourselves. No matter how goofy we look on the outside, asking that our only weapons be a vulnerable love. mind of Christ means never giving up on the ones we love, even if it means getting frostbitten along the way. Amen. My friends, as we prepare for the offering, I want you to hold your gift in your hands, even if they're a little frostbitten from doing the work of God.